Hello everyone. Welcome to Making Music with Live Coding. My name is Rem and I'm a software developer with over 12 years of professional experience. A decade ago, I used to jam with my friends on a music store called Fillmore, and I used to play keyboard back then. Just the casual jamming sessions. But now uh, recently I got into coding with music using live coding, and I'd like to share this with you as well. So, this presentation is going to be about an introduction to live coding and also an introduction to algorithmic music creation with Strudel, which it's a very good application that I'm going to feature later. For now, let's take a view on some perspectives. So, traditionally, we often think of coding as a way of solving problem or automating tasks, and often we use this in business. For example, we use coding to create e-commerce platforms, or maybe script to um, process Excel sheets. The use of coding in a traditional sense, and especially on my job, is mostly on commerce for and automation and production. But in terms of live coding, sometimes we think what is live coding in a business perspective. It's something that the interviewer would call you and schedule for live coding, but that's not what's the live coding we're going to discuss now. Live coding in the for this presentation is an alternative approach. It reframes code as an instrument or a medium or an artistic medium. So it's used as an ephemeral and expressive, and we create music in real time. Here we use it as a form of performing, and we blur the line between tool and art. So we use coding here in a live coding sense as a form of something we use in performance, in creativity, and community as well. So what is live coding music? Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that live coding is a shift in perspective where we use coding as a medium in performing arts. But in terms of live coding music is a form of performing arts that programmers project to their screens and write code to generate music live. So we use code as we could say that it's an instrument, or and there is an organization called TopLab, which they organize events on algorithm and live coding worldwide. Other when you're performing a live coding, you're supposed to show your screen to the audience. So why is that? I think one of the main reasons is when you're performing a guitar or a piano on live, you often show it to the audience how you're performing, right? You don't put a cloth under and perform underneath. So you let everybody know your skills. So that's the same principle with live coding. So you show your code, you show the logic, how you came up with your musical patterns, and you let the audience know. So yeah, that's the motto of TAPLab. Yeah. So, oh yeah, here's an example. In Drupal, Drupal is a CMS. So on its 21st anniversary, they hired Alexandra Cardenas on DrupalCon Prague um, for the welcome reception. So here's an example on how the performer is doing it. So they usually have a huge screen, and they perform on a laptop, and they edit code on the fly, and it's playing music. Later I'll be doing some sample demonstration of that, but for now, this is just to give you an idea on how it's done. I think the code she's using here is tidal cycles, although I can't find a video of her performing this, but in YouTube, most of her videos are using tidal cycles. Tidal cycles is a popular medium for live coding. That I'll be presenting something similar to tidal cycles, but that I think that's what she's. I'm assuming that's what she's using right now. So yeah, the software or application I'm going to be presenting to you is Strudel. Like many, there are many tools for live coding. A lot. Some of them are obscure, some of them are popular, but right now the one I'm going to present to you is Strudel. I'll be explaining to you the reason on the next slide why, but for now, Strudel is a live coding environment for making music, and it's a port of Tidal Cycles. So Tidal Cycles is a desktop application. So Strudel is more on browser based. So why Strudel? Yeah, I'll be explaining to you why. One is zero setup, just as I mentioned earlier. In the it's since it's in the browser, there's no need to install it. You just run it. Then you can even use it offline. It can be used offline since it uses takes advantage of progressive web apps. It's a technique where your browser is able to cache the page, and also so you could able to access the website offline, although the sounds would still need you need to play it first so that it would cache the sounds as well, which also makes it good since, for example, you can use it on your mobile phone. I'm able to use Strudel on my mobile phone, and it doesn't use much data since the sounds are being cached. So I can also use it offline as well. So yeah, zero. That's for zero setup. You can run it directly on Chrome, Firefox, or Safari, or whatever your favorite browser is. It's open source, so its code is hosted on Codeberg. You can also access the source code and download it. And if you're an expert, you can also do some modifications. The current maintainers is the community, so the source code is free for all to access. And also it provides visual feedback. So there is a basic feedback which I like on Strudel. It displays what part of the code is playing. It reminds me of in software development. It reminds me of the debugger. So you're seeing the steps on how it's being played. You can also display some things like waveforms or basic piano rolls, which I'll be presenting later. But for now, that's one of the features, very good features of Strudel. Anyway, so here's Strudel. Since it's a web app, I'm able to embed it on the slideshow, since the slideshow is also web. So we can try the basic sounds here. But later I'll be showing to you the full screen, since this is not the full experience of Strudel. But the purpose of this is just to show you what the code would look like if you're working with Strudel. So here is the way to play sound. This is the bass drum, hi-hat, snare drum. Actually, I'm not that expert in drumming, so I only know the basic drum parts. If I click play, it's going to play. Yep. As you can hear, it's playing on a loop. You'll notice that, right? Anyway, before I explain on about the loop, so you notice that there is a function we called sound. Then we add a string, and we add text, BD, which is short for bass drum, SD snare drum, and HH for hi-hat. This is the reference. You can also check. There are other parts of the drum that's added there as well. Yeah, that's something that you can use. For example, you can change it to clap, and Anyway, there are many samples in strudel, but these are just the basics. Um, by the way, if I forgot to mention, if you're you don't need to be an expert in programming to use strudel. Most of the artists I've been seeing on YouTube, especially on the professionals, they don't have a software development background. Most of them just went into live coding. So you can learn programming along the way. And the language, by the way, this is using is JavaScript, which is a very popular language that can easily be learned since you only need a browser. But you can jump in even without prior JS experience. So yeah, so that's the basic sound. We use either sound or S. I forget to test that, but you can use yes S as well. Shortcuts are good too, especially in a live coding setup. The shorter code, the better. So next is rhythm and meaning notation. We're still at sound, but so um, you'll notice that Strudel uses or it follows a mini notation, which they call. And in this mini notation, this is where we express on how the beats and patterns are set. For example, this one, we're able to play the bass drum, but there are subsequences called that hi-hats. So if I play it like this, so you'll notice that the notes are rather the documentation calls it events. So each sound here is an event. The event is half for a beat, so it gets fit into a beat, then it becomes part of a sequence. And in Strudel, every time we play, it's on a loop since it's called a cycle. So it's always going to play on a loop. And if you add more events or samples here, for example, I add another to bass drum. This is a rest, by the way, the minus. You can also use a tilde. I actually prefer the tilde since it's much since minus is an operator, but you can use minus if you like. It's much easier to press a minus. Oh yeah, you'll notice it get faster, right? So the more I add sounds, the faster it gets. So what it does is in a cycle, the more you add events, it gets divided into many parts. And if you create a subsection, it becomes divided within the section for an event. So if I add more hi-hats here, expect that it's going to be fast, right? Super fast. See, so the duration of this is similar to this, but it gets divided into 4. So, I know it's a bit confusing at first, but with some practice, you might eventually get. So, yeah, you can also try the other subsequences. Just comment it out, and it's going to play the last one that's commented out. There's no need to comment out the first one. So in a subsequence, you can add also another subsequence, and so on and so forth. So you notice that it's much slower because there are only 2 events, this BD and this mega subsequence, and inside the subsequence there's another subsequence. So yeah. Next is speed up. Speed up, or I like to call it multiply, since you use the multiplication symbol. So if you set it, for example, bass drum and snare drum times 2, so it's going to become double. By the way, this is like a shorthand for this. For example, if I do something like this, So yeah, multiply or speed up is a shorthand for sequence. So it creates a subsequence and multiplies or repeats your beat or your event. Yeah, and you can also change your bank. For example, this is much more. I think the first one is using a standard drum set, but you can change the bank to a TR909. So it's a much more electronic beat. There are also other banks as well. You can also check it in strudel. And here, you can also set the CPM. So, like I mentioned earlier, strudel works with cycles, and cycles is what define the loop where the pattern is played. So instead of BPM, we use CPM, cycles per minute. But if you want to, since in music terminology, we're much more used to BPM, so you can set the BPM, for example, 81 beats per minute divided by the number of beats within a bar or measure. For example, this one is 4 and 81 beats per minute with 4 beats in a bar. If I play this, I get the drum for "We Will Rock You" by Queen. By the way, the exclamation means repeat, so you can also write it something like this: repeat without speeding up. So I think I forgot to add what the exclamation does, but what it does is it just repeats it without creating a subsequence. I think that's the best explanation for that. And yeah, so yeah, these are just the reference of the basic patterns we used earlier. And you can also use patterns like this. When I was learning strudel for the first time, I preferred this one since it's much more easier to read. It reminds me of a drum machine or a piano roll if you're using the AWs. So you can use something like this. I mean, it's much more easier to read as well, and sometimes you can also use this for complex beat patterns as well. So yeah, there's you have the freedom to use any patterns you like with strudel. So for our next slide, so strudel is not just limited to drums. You can also create melodies or bass lines as well. For example, here I'm able to play the piano. You notice I'm using numeric numbers. These values correspond to the MIDI number, or for example, keyboard 60 is for middle C or C4, and 50 is D3. So these are just numeric this numeric representation of the MIDI numbers of note. But you can also use letters. Actually, I'm much more used to letters than numbers since that's what the music teachers used to teach me. So you can use letters, and you can also try different sounds. For example, let's try the xylophone. I think GM means general MIDI, not sure. Right, you can use a xylophone. You can also use I think this is a square lead, something for synthesizers, although I'm not yet in that lesson. But alright, that's a bit loud. Let me try guitar muted. By the way, in terms of writing notes, it kind of reminds me of something in the past. Did you know back then, in the early 2000s, the Nokia 3310 had this feature, and other Nokia phones had this feature where you can uh, compose music or compose custom ringtones in the phone. I mean, it was really challenging back then. People just used a numpad to type in music, but I guess that's what boredom could bring you back then, especially since internet wasn't or social media wasn't that much. But yeah, that's just a little trivia. I just decided to add this in because writing notes in code kind of reminds me of what Nokia used to do back then, and probably some phone models as well. Um, yeah, so another feature of Strudel is visuals. As you could see earlier, when I play a music, there's a highlighted part in the code. I can also add something like a piano roll, so that since your code is going to be shown in a live audience, you can also show some extra movements, although there's a much more advanced way to do that, but I think this is enough for the example. Yeah, also try here. I think it's cool. See, it adds you extra animations, which is nice to have. So, yeah, and here's an example of DJ Dave with an audio visualizer. I think you can play this. So that's an example of live coding with visualizations. By the way, DJ Dave is a very popular live coder who also does Algorave. Algorave is a subculture in live coding where they perform live coding on an audience, mostly dance music. So that's why it's called Algorave. So yeah, you can also check our videos on YouTube. Right, for now I'll be showing you the REPL. So this is Strudel. This is the REPL. When you visit Strudel for the first time, you'll be greeted with the REPL. REPL in programmers, it stands out for read, eval, print, loop, so, which also fits the name since it loops your code. And one of the first things that would, you'd see is the welcome screen. This is the pattern. It contains the previous codes I've used, and it's stored locally. There's no need to sign up on Strudel. You can just do it on the browser. And samples, yeah, the samples are listed here. You don't need to memorize them all. There are I think there are just a few important that you can use. You can also click them to check on how they sound. There's also a crow here for some reason. I don't know why. Yeah, it's a crow. And some here are, I think, for synths. You can also import there's an instruction here on how to import your own custom samples. Reference. Yeah, this is also the reference. You can look up to this if you need a code or to check on the reference. For example, sound. Sound is also here. So the usage of sound, you can also read it here. And yeah, there's no need to memorize all of this. You can just create music with just a few of the functions here, and you might discover them along the way. Console. Console is something you can also display it for debugging, and also it displays if you have an error or it starts. Settings. Yeah, well, I think one of the first thing you might do is configure it based on your preference. And one important thing when visit Strudel is to check the learn. So this one is a very interactive documentation. So It also contains embedded player where you can try some of the sample codes. The first thing you'd like to go to when you visit the documentation is the workshop. So the workshop, the one on the left side, contains like most of the things you need to know to make basic music, and it introduces you to sample codes like here. Uh, Casio is like the clicking sound on the 90s Casio keyboard. They added it here as well. But yeah, oh yeah, take your time to explore the workshop, and there are a lot of examples provided here, and it's also very interactive as well. Uh, so Yeah, that was Billie Jean and Take on Me. And yeah, so those were just cover musics, but I believe we can do more with Strudel. And these are just some demo of what you can do with Strudel. So yeah, I do hope you enjoyed the music. Although even though I admittedly made some errors along the way, since I'm a bit nervous doing this. Anyway, um, yeah. So if you'd like to join in the community, you can start with the Strudel website, strudel.cc. So it's this one, and it also contains the interactive documentation as well. The Discord, yeah, these are also clickable links, by the way. If you have the if you're able to access the slide, um, Discord community is a friendly community. You can ask almost any questions at the Strudel Help channel. And by the way, this is the Tidal Cycles Discord, but it also contains channel for Strudel, and yeah, and even stupid questions are encouraged as well. So they're a friendly community, and usually they answer like um, within a short period of time. And Tidal Cycles website, you can also visit it here. This one, although you're learning Strudel, I believe you can also visit this since it contains references that aren't in the documentation, like the community. Oh yeah, it has a forum here. Although you can visit the Discord, but they also have a Tidal Club forum that also has a strudel. If you're more of a person who prefers forums rather than chat rooms, then you can also check the Tidal Club forum. It also contains some things like history or the Top Lab manifesto, which is and some tips as well. Anyway, and yeah, so the future's open. The since you're working on a browser, the entry barrier for Strudel is very low, and there's no need to install anything. You can use it wherever you are, even you're on a mobile phone or a laptop or a Linux desktop. You can access Strudel almost anywhere, and it's really easy to get into. And yeah, the code can be challenging at first, but my advice is just to keep on trying it. And yeah, I do hope that this presentation gave you a new insight on code. That coding is not just a tool for solving problems, but it's also an artistic medium for creativity. And yeah, thank you for your time and this presentation. I hope you give some time to explore Strudel and other creative coding mediums as well, whichever would suit your interest. And feel free to explore this slide. You can check out the description, or maybe I'll be putting a link on the screen as well, just in case it's not clickable. And I've also provided some bonus references that you might want to check too on this slideshow. Uh, just some suggested links as well. Thank you for your time, and I do hope you could share your music as well.